How concrete is this 100% number itself?
I would put not a very high degree of confidence of any of these things being concrete. I mean, the way I think of trade deal is the way, for example, Singapore pursues a trade deal or an FTA with another country, years of negotiation, hundreds, if not thousands of pages of detailed agreement. Everything we've got on our hands right now over the last 3-4 months, single page letters or a couple of pages of agreement, or even the worst case, a couple of tweets or truths. So I think that to think that not any of these things would be entering in a very concrete manner in boardroom decisions is not correct. But the flip side, there is a cost, which is this chronic uncertainty about nothing being set in stone would create a paralysis as opposed to an acceleration of investment in the U.S.
So, Taimur, you think it's going to follow the playbook of the model so far, which is started at 100, right? Which sounds like a high number considering that the early number threatened had been 25, so it's 4x, right? But look, start with the maximalist position and then go down from there.
Right, but this one seemed to be even more cavalierly set up than the other stuff, because it seemed like, that press conference with Tim Cook, that it was being said almost on a casual basis. We've really not heard any discussion about such a hard number until that very moment. Yeah. And then the big caveat that if a company is investing in the U.S., then they wouldn't be subject to it. I mean, imagine the amount of gaming companies can do around that. I mean, are you adjacent to a company that is investing and therefore you too? or are you not, right? So I think it'll be in the eye of the beholder. A lot of these things will end up as art as opposed to science.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that's pretty dodgy. How are markets digesting and taking all this?
I think the markets are becoming a bit numb to the perma volatility on these issues, and hence the focus is on the AI space and earnings as opposed to a permanent change in the tariff and trade landscape. I think the market tried very hard to price that in April and May, and all those pauses and repeated negotiations have really sort of made the market incapable of pricing it in any concrete manner. So we're a bit all over the place, Martin. It can easily have a very strong downside if some of these things become more concrete, and unlike the popular theory that on a gradual basis the market is pricing it, market is just not capable of pricing it in because of the chronic uncertainty.
Back to the Fed and the issue of independence, which has been, I think, one of the big overhangs over the market for quite some time now, since Trump started going at Powell, which is probably pretty much from day one.
Of course.
Right? Do you think what's likely to happen more now is not so much trying to get him out for cause, for overrunning budget on renovations in the Eccles building, etc., but more a slow rolling look? Seats become vacant, they need to be replaced, and suddenly before you know it, you've got a majority on the Fed who are, I'd say, probably perceived as very comfortable with what Trump wants to do.
So it seems to me that the need for drama, the window is shrinking because, Powell has less than a year ago to go. Yeah. So we're not really talking about some recession type scenario where the Fed is being extremely obstinate and Trump urgently needs rate cuts. So I think if the U.S. economy is tracking 2%, inflation is no higher than 3%, the Fed will, even under Powell, start giving guidance toward rate cuts, which is what Trump wants. Yeah. But of course, he wants to harass Powell, and being somebody like Stephen Miran in would help.
So I got to ask you, look, you're an economist, right? What do you make of the whole mess over the BLS, right, and the jobs report, et cetera, the data? Is the data just lagging? Is that the issue because of a collection problem? Is it still legit? And if so, it suggests that the Fed is way behind the curve.
I think that a data point, whether it's problematic or not, does not make up the entire U.S. data set in terms of understanding where the economy is. Yeah. Of course, in terms of payrolls, there have been issues before, widely known. But that doesn't mean that we don't pay any value to payrolls, but there are a whole bunch of other numbers, the unemployment statistic, the jobless numbers, all sorts of surveys done by private and public sector entities. So I think we have a pretty decent sense of what's happening in the labor market. Private sector jobs softening, public sector still holding up, unlikely to persist, and therefore overall job market will go south, independent of whether we think the payrolls numbers are useful or useless.
So is job growth at stall speed?
Looks like it. I mean, we don't really hear any company announcing big hiring decisions other than the AI space, but it's an extremely small part of the market.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough. Sure.
Yeah, and can I just continue the conversation on Apple and obviously sort of in line with what we're getting in terms of the chips, tariffs on semiconductors and chips as well. And, the idea of Tim Cook announcing this yet another additional $100 billion at the White House event, yet another win, it seems like, to the markets at least, for President Trump himself. How is this going to really change the Apple supply chain and more relevant to Asia as well?
Right. I mean, not just $100 billion. I think there was a gold plaque presented to Trump as well when Tim Cook was there.
Exactly.
It doesn't seem to me that in the broader scheme of things, when we're talking about hundreds of billions numbers being thrown around in the AI space and investing in the US space, that after a while these numbers carry much meaning. I don't think if I were modeling Apple's P&L for the next 5 years, I would have to input this as a fundamental shift in Apple's cost of doing business. I think Apple has proven to be very smart in managing its supply chain. When China became difficult, it pivoted to India. If India has some issues going forward, it is nimble enough to do certain high value-added things in the US and bring elsewhere and keep the truce vis-a-vis Trump. Sherry, these large tech companies, whether it is NVIDIA or Meta or Apple, they've become so large. They're a bit like the banks of the mid-aughts in the 2005s. They're just too big to fail. They're too big to be deeply affected by tariff. Their lobbying power is tremendous. Trump does listen to them. I don't think, unlike many other things that's happening in the world, the big tech is going to be troubled by Trump's tenure.